everyone. Today we have our another new episode, and this is very famous. We have our debate, and we have our world famous debater from around the world. We have Professor Rob as a Prime Minister for today's Parliament. We have our honorable members and Minister for today's Parliament, Mr. Adam. We have our opposition leader, Professor David Smith, Deputy Leader of the Opposition, Mr. Marshall, and Parliament from the opposition side, Professor Ching. First, I would like to give chance our honorable Prime Minister, very famous Prime Ministers. Already he get like lot of likes and lot of like views for his debate. My friend Naz Daily also start debate. I request my friend Naz Daily, please follow our debate and follow our format. Maybe it will be more popular for you. Professor Robin Daly.
Yeah, I'm for it. For space.
Okay.
Extremely
Okay. Okay. Excellent. Professor Rob, actually, I believe that opposition member of the parliament, he want to join in the government side. Your parliament and your cabinet allow it, or how does it work? I need your permission.
Who wants to join my party?
Professor Ching.
I thought I was against. I thought the proposition was that space exploration was a waste of time and money. Didn't you just change
I
that?
thought he was against too, Sharif.
Okay.
Professor Ching. But it also says today is the 20th and today's the 27th, so our space-time continuum is messed up.
Okay. I'm sorry about that. Professor Ching, so opposition. So you go for oppositions. Professor, our honorable Prime Ministers, we are waiting for your speech. Go and
sure.
fire.
Okay, so this House believes, thanks for having me, Sharif. This is an important topic. This House believes that space exploration is a waste of time and money. Certainly for large countries like the United States, China, and even Russia, it may make a certain amount of sense since they have the capability of reaching space. They have missile rocket technology. They have heavy lift. But our country has none of that. We have no space industry. We have no aerospace company. We have no we can't even make airplanes. So the concept of us putting billions of dollars into exploring space without the ecosystem in place to benefit from it is a waste. Not only could we spend an inordinate amount of money going to space, once we got there, how would we protect the land that we carved out? Say we found that space mining and asteroids was incredibly beneficial. How would we keep the bigger countries from just coming in and taking our claims? We would have no capability. There's no space-based United Nations to back us up. And the rules and laws in space at best are fluid. And we've certainly seen that domestically, the United Nations is unable to stop incursions from one government that wants to take a land from another. And they are going to be less capable in space. So it's not that space exploration doesn't provide some benefits. It's just that in our country, with our lack of ecosystem, we have no space capability. We would have to build up rocket launch capability. We would have to have launch sites. We would have to spend billions of dollars training astronauts. And even when we got them into space, the developed countries haven't figured out how to keep them safe. The amount of DNA degradation, even the eyesight degrades over the short 6-month period of time in the ISS space station. So longer periods in space are going to have higher degradation, and the radiation in space is like having a CT scan. A full CT scan every 6 months that you're in space. It's an inordinate amount of radiation, which can lead to cancer, advanced diseases, and things that you would need to deal with on the planet, but would be very difficult to deal with once people are in space. And let's go even farther. Mars, the first place that the large countries are planning to first planet that the large countries are planning to colonize, is incredibly inhospitable at the moment. It is very likely that first Mars expedition will die slowly and painfully on television for the world to see. And what's that going to do for future funding for space exploration, but that's their problem. I don't want to make it our problem because we really lack the foundational elements to allow us to compete with the large countries. And we can still benefit from their activities in space and their inventions. We can certainly license them. We can in some ways co-fund some of the experiments, but funding space exploration gives us no additional benefit for massive additional cost. We are much better focused on things that we do well. We farm. We do have manufacturing capacity to build things that we could improve. We have, like every other developed nation, problems with dealing with pandemics, with illness, with clean water, with available food. We've got issues with regard to climate change that we need to mitigate. I mean, we're not big enough to really deal with climate change. We're just simply too small, especially given the fact that the big countries are producing most of the pollutants. But we do have to keep our people safe, and that money, the money that we save from space exploration, could go to keep the individual safe, to do what we are missioned to do as a government, which isn't to blast around outer space with few funds, but to actually take care of our people on the planetary surface to assure their health and safety. So, in summation, space exploration may make sense for the large countries. I say may. It really kind of depends on the political climate in each of those countries, because clearly that's gone up and down even there. But at least they have the ecosystem and infrastructure to pursue it. We do not, and building that ecosystem and infrastructure would be excessively costly and pull funds from things that we need to do now, things that would allow us to assure the long lives of our people, assure their clean water, assure their food, and ensure their safety. That these are problems we can deal with, we should deal with. Space is simply beyond our horizons, and we should let the larger countries deal with those issues, because we just simply lack the resources to do so.
Thank you, Honorable Prime Minister, for your speech. Now I request our opposition leader, Professor David Smith.
As we look at the whole area of space exploration, we are reminded ourselves that space really is our final frontier, that we as a exploring species still need to work through and handle it. And space today is at an inflection point. In the past, space was the domain of only very large nations with extremely large budgets to tackle the exploration of space. Now we're shifting to a time where commercial space is coming into vogue. We are seeing small companies beginning to successfully launch rockets into space. We're seeing small countries begin to take part of the space exploration. And we need to begin to look like we're there and what we're trying to do. I even call out the fact that the Prime Minister in his remote office today has space behind him on the walls, and that the Prime Minister believes that this exploration is a key thing, even though he's arguing against it for our nation, even though our peer nations are beginning to get involved. What are some of the pros of us going to space? Well, knowledge generation. Thanks to space exploration programs, we discovered many things that helped us understand the universe. And they're helping us find problems and solutions to our problems that we're going to face, such as overpopulation and the need to become alterplanetary, inhabiting other nations. And humans have always been engaged in exploration to satisfy our sense of curiosity and opportunities. During the age of discoveries in the 15th, 16th century, countries such as Spain, Portugal, England, and others invested heavy in exploration and became powers. And even though we look at things like the exploration going to Mars, if we think back during that time and the number of days, the number of months it took travelers to travel across the ocean to Australia, comparable time to what it would take for us to travel to Mars. Today, artificial satellites are critical tools in our society. They're not only used for defense and things, they help us monitor the effects of global warming. They help us detect wildfires. They're a key element of our communication systems today. You know, space agencies are necessary to operate satellites. Scientific advancement, the byproducts, they've helped us discover, introduce, and test new products. You know, zero G manufacturing is an area where we're creating new types. The result has contributed to things like advancement in fire resistant material, medical devices, all types of things that we begin to see that have improved human life and will continue to improve. Let's not discount the fact that space industry has created hundreds of thousands of jobs. You know, in the developing nations, we see that very much so. The estimate last year is that in developing nations, almost 200,000 people are directly involved in space industry jobs. And a final point I'd like to make kind of as we go through this is the space race may save humanity. Life on Earth is threatened by climate change, pollution, depletion of our resources, infectious disease, or, as we've seen the threats lately, nuclear war. And we can find resources on other planets that can also help us. The ability for us to look and really understand it. And as we look at that, for example, we see all these asteroids, and we know in the past that asteroid impacts severely change the Earth's environment and how it was the cause of species going extinct. And we need to have a robust space program so that we can look at maybe how to deflect asteroids, how to protect ourselves. And, you know, the ability to mine space, the ability to understand that we might be colonizing the moon, we might be colonizing Mars and others. Very important as we look forward towards the future. Do we want to go back and shelter ourselves where we are today? Or do we want to continue to be an exploring nation, an adventure nation, where we're built around the concept of innovation and the desire to go where no person has gone before? I think that is really what we on the opposition see as the important things with our space programs. So Sharif, thank you so much for allowing us to respond to the Prime Minister, and maybe we should suggest for him in his home office a cave as opposed to space in the background. So thank you, Sharif.
Thank you, Professor David Smith. I know that you are working with NASA project for our youth community in Asia. Hopefully you can bring more interesting story from NASA and all of the great innovations, and our youth community will inspire and they will develop the futures. Professor Rob, with your permission, because you are today's Parliament Prime Ministers, I want to invite Professor Paul in the government side for doing debate. Okay.
Yeah,
Professor Paul, is that okay?
I'm a huge supporter of space programs, so I'm not sure what arguments I can find.
Actually, yes. Previously, I hear a joke from you. You said that if you want to be millionaire, first become billionaires and go for a space program, then you become millionaires. So that's why I think you are supporter of the government side. Anyway, it's open. It's open. Now I request Honorable Minister for today's Parliament, Mr. Adam.
Thank you very much. Well, like many topics and issues, it is nuanced. It's not so black and white. I would be a fool to be against space travel and colonization of the moon and Mars. I would be foolish and myopic to brush it aside as a complete waste of time and money and resources, because exploration and watching our fellow men and women achieve amazing feats is good for the collective soul of humanity. It nourishes us. but it's time specific. Right now, human civilization is hurtling towards the cliff of crisis after crisis after crisis. And of course, right now, the resources and monies that would be funding space travel otherwise and space stations and the rest of it, like I said, it's dependent on how well we are doing or not. Space exploration is something that is better suited to a golden age, arguably the opposite to where we are now, which could be called a dark age or a grey age at least. Things could be far worse, I suppose, or they definitely could. We have all the time in the world to pick back up where we left off regarding our space programs. We have all the time in the world. The historical significance will always be there. The information, data, the blueprints, if you will always be there waiting for us to pick back up where we left off. What we do not have all the time in the world for, or the universe for even, what we don't have all the time in the world for is climate change, pollution, fossil fuels, oil, resources that are limited and finite, and yet more wars and pandemics all piling on the pressure, and personal feelings about each and every one of those aside. Of course, I'm talking about crises and existential risks in general, of course. We cannot afford to get too ahead of ourselves and then trip up and watch our civilization and all of its achievements spiral down because we failed to allocate our resources and finances properly and appropriately. Furthermore, it's a bit of a cop-out as well. Yes, we can develop space travel to colonize the planets and build stations and craft, but that would be too much like leaving a problem and trying to ignore and procrastinate. It would encourage a degree of laziness regarding stewardship of our own planet first, foremost, primarily. We don't want to bounce from place to place, moon to moon, asteroid to asteroid, sucking them all dry before moving on to the next location. The metaphor I like to use is a school. Earth is a school, or like a school, or a cradle, as Tsiolkovsky said, but also a school, perhaps more school than cradle. So it's imperative we learn from these hardships first and allow time for our wisdom to catch up with our technological ingenuity so that we can avoid disaster. And I love reading about UFOs and ufology, and allegedly there was much UFO activity when we were setting off H-bombs and nuclear bombs. It was said that they were babysitting us and trying to influence us to push us away from destroying ourselves. So if aliens don't think we're ready yet, then maybe we really are not ready yet. So hubris is also an existential risk here, but those are my initial thoughts today. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Minister from the Parliament. Now I request our opposition deputy leader of the Parliament, Mr. Marshall.
Well, thank you, Sharif. This is a very important topic, and like the head of the opposition, I totally support the thought that we should participate in this endeavor. And it's not a zero-sum game as portrayed by the Deputy Minister Adam or by the Prime Minister. The Prime Minister statement in causality, I agree with the opposition. He's got to get rid of that image of space behind him and put a cave up there. That's where these folks are residing. Our citizens can benefit from this several ways. First of all, our country is a small country. It's true, as the Prime Minister pointed out. We're not likely to go out into space and take on other interests and other large entities, but we can be part of a coalition of people that go into space. And a classic example of that is another small country that is about the size of our country. It's called the Isle of Man. It sits in the Irish Sea. It has 80,000 citizens there, of which 30,000 are involved in some fashion of technology development, and many times these people go in and out of the space development that was done for NASA and for other private enterprises that are now taking on the space challenge. So I think this myopic view of space and how it's viewed is not to the benefit of our citizens. Our citizens can obtain good paying jobs, and we have a lot of learned people, just like in the Isle of Man, who have advanced degrees, such as the kind of degrees that our host Sharif has, and especially in science-based areas where we can contribute to space. The question is, by contributing to space for other nations in a coalition of that, like the Isle of Man does, what are the benefits? Well, if you look at the Isle of Man, a lot of the work that they've done has been beneficial for sustainability. The very issues that the assistant minister of the government, Adam, has talked about, that we got to focus on what's here on the planet, and well, it does. It benefits both. The history of space exploration benefiting humans on the planet has been enormous. And all one has to do is look at the different types of technological developments and capabilities that have benefited humankind as opposed to created problems for humankind, and you'll see it outweighs those issues. And yes, we're always going to be in a dark age or a gray age, as Minister Adam talks about, but that's always going to be the case. If you wait till the golden age, you'll never be there. We don't live in a golden age. We'll never live in a golden age. The golden age is a dream. It's an aspiration. There's nothing wrong with that. But the likelihood of it occurring in reality is not as great as a reality today. And our reality wanes from positive. When John Kennedy, the president of the United States, sent out the aspiration to go to the moon for the United States, and mankind followed. I think it's important that there's a benefit for our citizens to participate, just like the citizens of the Isle of Man, where they can participate in programs that are put on by NASA or that are put on by Elon Musk's company or other entities that are out there. The European Space Agency works very closely with the Isle of Man. We could benefit from that, and our country and our can create not only good paying jobs, but also contribute to the climate crisis issue. A lot of the things that we're learning in space or for space exploration, even here on Earth, are being a benefit for the climate crisis. Case in point, there is undersea development by NASA and other entities for space exploration, because it kind of emulates a scenario where you're in a closed capsule and you're undersea, emulating outer space. And from that, they're learning quite a bit about human behavior and psychology and people living in long spaces for long confined terms, let's say as a trip to Mars might be. But at the same token, I think that if you want optics, Prime Minister, don't worry about the optics of people dying in space. Worry about the optics of people dying in schools or people dying on the battlefield in Ukraine. Those are the optics that you need to be concerned about. And the optics for our country is that we need to be on the right side of history, the right side of science, and the right side of development for humankind. And as the leader of the opposition has pointed out, this is where we need to be. And I congratulate the leader of the opposition, David Smith, my leader, in his ability to bring forth the opportunity to take a negative and turn it into a positive instead of taking a positive. So again, sorry, somebody was trying to call me there. So I'm just telling the opposition, which is the government, is that vote for us, get us back into government so we can create better paying jobs, put people to work through space exploration to help solve the climate crisis, because they're tied intricately at the hip. Space exploration brings out technologies and challenges that are existential. Being in space is an existential threat. Being on Earth is an existential threat. They're tied at the hip, and we need to pursue that on an ongoing basis. And again, I applaud the opposition leader, my leader in the parliament, David Smith, for having pointed out that we live in a reality, not in a false reality, as the government is doing today. So vote for us for the next round, put us back into power, and we will make sure that we will create the kind of jobs and address climate issues, not just through space exploration, but through all technological advances. And on that note, David Smith and my leader, I applaud you for your leadership role.
Thank you, Mr. Marshall. Yes, this parliament want everyone in the real parliaments, like how you contributing for policy, modern science, engineering, technology, and in mock parliament. We believe you people are the right kind of politicians who can handle real politics and you can save more human lives. Now I request our Honorable Prime Minister, as opposition side has 4 speakers, so you can take lead as a speaker from the government side. Mr. Rob, as a third speaker from.
As a third speaker. Oh, so because I got to carry most of the. Okay, I got it. As my twin brother, the Prime Minister, said previously, space is certainly fascinating and interesting. I certainly applaud the opposition for noticing that both I and my brother have similar space pictures behind us, but just because we happen to like Star Wars and Time Bandits, doesn't necessarily mean we want to pivot the entire country towards droids that roll on balls and little short guys that fly around time and space and pirate ships. Art is not science, and science, while it can be art, in this particular case is not. So let's point, since it's my job to come in and just kind of poke holes at things, I guess, that the opposition has said that small countries are getting involved in space exploration. Well, not really. The small countries are getting involved in space, but there's a difference between space exploration and space exploitation. The topic at hand is exploration, going out into space and discovering things. And here, there isn't a lot of a global participation in space exploration. We only really have the US, China, and Russia that are actively involved. Much of the other activity, if you look it up, is launching satellites into space, which is exploitation. The opposition had pointed out factories in space could be very beneficial. No argument there. If the opposition figures out how the heck to staff such a prospect, we'd be willing to understand the proposals. But exploitation is not exploration. Exploitation just says, hey, we want to make money from doing something, and the parliament, the majority party, is not against that. But once again, it's got to be economically feasible. For every launch that goes into space, it costs right now $58 million, which is actually a bargain compared to what it used to cost when NASA was doing launches. But with $58 million, we can feed 45,000 people for a year. That's a lot of people during a time when we have a shortage of food. And that's one launch. That's just one launch. And certainly we can justify that for putting up a communications satellite. We can certainly justify that for putting up a military satellite, because the world is incredibly hostile. But it's very hard to justify that kind of an expense to send somebody to Mars where the returns are not clear or even obvious, and let alone explore the outer reaches of the galaxy. Like some Star Trek episode, which it looks like the opposition has been watching excessively and somehow believes are real. Right now, we are not, as a race, capable of doing that kind of exploration. The science doesn't exist. We know full well that if we were to launch people in that kind of a distance, they wouldn't survive the trip. That's not my opinion. That's settled science. We right now cannot shield humans enough to allow for that long-term travel. And even going back when the world was exploring the New World and looking for the cheaper path to India, it wasn't like every country could participate in that, and it wasn't like the ones that did always got financial benefits from it. A lot of those efforts failed catastrophically, and maybe the opposition is not concerned about the death of folks. So certainly they pointed out deaths in war and deaths in schools, and we are certainly appalled by those deaths as well. But space exploration has nothing to do with those deaths. In fact, they're arguing our point, because that money that we would be using to explore space could be used to instead harden our defenses to make sure that Russia doesn't invade us or somebody else doesn't invade us later. If you look at the Ukraine. Look at Ukraine. You're not supposed to say the first. Look at Ukraine. What would a space program have done for them? They'd be in worse trouble now than they otherwise would have been, because the money that otherwise went to support and maintain their military would have undoubtedly gone to the space program. And unlike the opposition, it is a zero-sum game. We only have so much money. We pull X amount of dollars from taxes. We pull, $54 million for a launch. And by the way, that doesn't include making the rocket. That doesn't include the making the industry. That doesn't include all the other stuff that runs to billions of dollars. We only have a set of funds. We pull funds and put them into a space program. We have to pull them from someplace else. We pull them from infrastructure. We pull them from health and safety. Do we pull them from military? Do we pull them from food programs? We pull them from education programs. Where does this magical money come from that we're going to be throwing into space to explore space? And then what's the benefit for exploration? The much of the benefit for local exploration has already been achieved. The additional benefit for deep space exploration has not, but it's iffy at best. It's not clear, even when we talk about asteroid mining, whether we can do it economically as a planet, let alone as a country. Now, the opposition pointed out the Isle of Man, and it's an interesting example, and not a bad one. But the Isle of Man, while they're fifth in line to maybe settle on the moon, doesn't launch much of anything. They're focused on living underneath an existing program that is largely based on military efforts and domestic efforts for communication and monitoring. While they are involved in space tourism, and God love them for space tourism, right now space tourism is not a profitable industry. And we're underperforming thanks to the pandemic on local tourism. So the idea we would spend a ton of money shooting people into space makes absolutely no sense, since none of our stores or merchants or businesses are going to benefit from those folks, because they're up there for 30 minutes or an hour. They're not down here buying stuff, which is what we really want them to be doing. So even when it comes to space tourism, it might make sense for SpaceX. Well, I should point out, SpaceX is really not involved in space tourism. They're kind of looking over at Amazon's effort and kind of wondering that, and that is one weird looking rocket. Anyway, so in the end, it still comes back to choices, and the government says it's space exploration may be important. It certainly could be incredibly important at some future point to get off the planet. But like Minister Adams said, we've got problems here on Earth right now, and we're not a big country, and we don't have an aeronautical industry here. There are very few countries that do. We are not the Isle of Man. I looked out the window. I checked. Maybe David Smith and Marshall might want to look out the window and just double check to make sure they're not in the Isle of Man. But we're not the Isle of Man here. We are a different country, and we don't have that industry here. In fact, most countries do not. They're focused on doing what their countries do well, not on space exploration. And I would argue with that majority, we should remain until it makes sense to exploit space, in which case we can be a fast follower. But there appears to be no real benefit to being a leader in space exploration. Space exploitation, maybe, but we're not in a position to lead there either. That particular effort is largely dominated by the big countries. And like the Isle of Man, we may be able to find ways to slip underneath their effort and supply them with parts. I mean, there's a substantial capability of saying maybe we can build parts and benefit from things, but that doesn't mean we have to do it. The folks that built the cannons for the ships that discovered America, they weren't the explorers, but they certainly made their money, where the people that actually paid for the ships, not so much, at least not initially. So certainly the argument that says, hey, if there's an opportunity out there to bring up part of an industry and make money supporting satellite launches or military capabilities, or even make money on some extreme case if exploration ever gets to critical mass, would not be averse to studying that. But that's not space exploration for us. That's space exploration for them, and us looking for ways to monetize their efforts, which is something we could do. Now, as you can see from my brother and I pictures, we're not against space, and we certainly aren't against science fiction concepts. And like Adam pointed out, at some point in the future, it may make economic sense, but right now it does not. Right now, the world is in turmoil. Right now, we've got problems with pandemics, with illness, and other illnesses. We've got monkeypox, for Christ's sake. We've got problems with food and food delivery. We've got problems with regard to folks fleeing their countries as a result of climate change. We've got problems with regard to education. We've got problems that we don't have enough money to deal with right now. So pulling another $1 billion, $2 billion, $3 billion that we don't have out to explore space, when we don't even have an industry to build up on makes no fundamental sense for us. We need to focus on the problems we can fix, not the problems that we are not equipped to even understand, let alone fix, and understand what's space exploration as a problem going to solve for us. One thing, the ability to get the people off the planet in case something catastrophic happens to the planet. That's pretty much it. If we get off the planet, then a catastrophic event that happens on the planet may allow the human race to continue. But you'd have to have a critical mass of people off planet to make that happen. And perhaps we should be working to make sure that we don't destroy the planet as a priority first, because there's a pretty good chance if we destroyed the Earth that a Mars colony wouldn't be able to survive without it, at least for a long period of time. And if that same effort was put into preserving the Earth, or at least providing a safe enclave on the planet that could survive such a catastrophe, the outcome might be a lot better. So in terms of choices, and the world has choices, if we had unlimited funds, if we had unlimited capability, and if we had a domestic space program, I'd be with the opposition. But none of those things exist here. We have a set of priorities. A space exploration should be on them, but towards the bottom of the list, not the top. We are simply not equipped to spend large amounts of money to do something we have no knowledge of how to do yet. We are not the Isle of Man. We are our own country, and it's most countries right now in the world today, the only activities we have in space is tossing a satellite up every once in a while to check out and see what's going on. And even for that, we use somebody else to do it because we don't have launch facilities here domestically. So why don't we just continue doing what we're doing with regard to space, exploiting it when we can, but exploration, we just simply don't have the budget or resources to do it. Much like in the early ages of the Industrial Revolution, there were a lot of countries that just said, you know what, we need to focus on our country, not exploration. And historically speaking, look at how all of that conquest eventually worked out. England had to retract, Spain had to retract, France had to retract. You not only have to go there and find something, you have to be able to defend it. And we have, I mean, it's not even clear that the U.S., China, and Russia can defend what it is they establish. We certainly could not. So from the standpoint of discovery to defense to even the benefit that would flow back down to us, exploration doesn't do that much for us. Exploitation might, but as I say, we should, even on exploitation, we should slipstream countries that already have the capability and have demonstrated they can do it economically and provide a return. We have not been able to do that, and we don't have the capability to do that. So this particular twin minister doesn't believe that space exploration is economically feasible for our country, nor does it provide enough benefit to justify taking food from children's mouths, medicine from our elderly, and opening us up to attack from countries like Russia, because that's where the budget would have to come from.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker, Prime Minister, for today's Parliament. Now I request our opposition member of the Parliament, Professor Ching.
Yeah, I have to make a very practical, important point here. You see, this nuclear war is the greatest threat to the existence of humans on Earth. And space exploration should be supported by all nations, almost every human being on Earth, because it can replace nuclear war, so that we can exist. And that one example is that exploration of the ocean one time had moved war from the land to the sea, and it must have saved lots of lives. And basically, competition is the engine of progress. In the absence of a rational method of arbitration, war is the ultimate form of competition. And unfortunately, today, the space exploration, let's face it, space exploration as a science is mainly for military competition. Okay, politicians all know that, and they say otherwise. And mankind has exhausted the maximum tolerance of competition with the possibility of nuclear conflict. So we need to somehow move this direction in a nuclear race to a space race. And you know, I myself I contribute the jump pulse mechanism for spacecraft docking and the spacecraft landing, and everybody can benefit from continued research into this direction. So we will be able to make robots that can take our place. So in other words, the space exploration will be good for everybody concerned in terms of knowledge, and the competition will push forward this the research. It's a difficult research. For example, all this microprocessor developed due to in the 1960s, and yeah, that's it for now.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Now I request for closing remarks. First, I request Professor Paul from opposition side.
Yes, it's been pointed out that first of all, space exploration is not necessarily by humans. Of course, we have lots of drones and unmanned spacecraft, which can do with robotics, can do tremendous amount of exploration and research, and they're of course much cheaper than manned programs. So even small countries need to be involved in some effort of space in terms of creating satellites. Other nations can launch them, but we need to have better coverage of our country and of the planet and neighboring countries by satellite monitoring, and the satellite orbits are very critical to coverage that we can get on our country. We can't rely on satellites and monitoring from other countries to fulfill our needs. So, whether a satellite be active or passive in terms of sensors, polar orbits or geosynchronous orbits, etc. There's a lot of details for any given satellite, so its usefulness for our country for monitoring our crops, for monitoring CO2, methane emissions, cloud cover, water vapor in the atmosphere, temperature through the air column, all of the radiation amount, albedo of our country, which can let us know about different crop well-being, etc. All of these things are crucial. We need to have some say in what type of satellites and what type of sensors are monitoring our country, and we can't rely on other nations to do that. So that's pretty obvious that we need some impact. The spin-offs have been mentioned, the advances in technology. We obviously want to advance the technology and know-how and education of our population, and having our foot into the space program, whether it be designing satellites, etc., is a very important avenue to increase the knowledge and technology savviness of people in our country. It doesn't have to be a huge outlay of money, and we're not taking money, food from children's mouths. I mean, this is just an absurd argument, of the zero-sum sort of game. it's distorted thinking. It's all or nothing thinking. You fund a huge amount or you fund nothing. I mean, there's obviously, reality is there's lots of gray. It's not just black and white, all or nothing. That's a cognitive distortion. It's a distortion of thinking and action. So we need to build climate change resilience in our society, like all other countries. And a very good way to do that is to have some money in improving the monitoring of our country from above, from space. And then we can figure out, how we can best become more resilient to withstand climate change. And we can monitor how climate is changing in our country, how temperatures are changing, how rainfall patterns are changing. So, it's pretty much, it's a no-brainer to have some say and impact in, in the space, in space, to continue the exploration of how our country is changing under climate change. So I just want to, emphasize those points. It's kind of silly to say it's, you feed the kids or you have some money in monitoring your environment from space. I mean, it's just an absurd, ridiculous argument. So thank you, Sharif, for holding this debate.
Thank you, sir. Now I request for the closing remarks, our Honorable Prime Minister, Professor Rob.
No, I go last. Oh, so Paul just did the closing for the opposition. I got you because we lost Dave. Okay, I'm with you. Okay, the opposition's raised some interesting arguments. The last one was ludicrous to compare space exploration with food. It kind of showcases that they don't understand the reality that we deal with in government. In government, we have to borrow from one side to feed the other. We have a fixed budget. We can ask for more money, but there's a pretty good chance we're not going to get it. The opposition, whoever's in power, will almost always assure that we maintain our current tax load and we don't raise taxes or do any of the other things that are required to make a major investment. Currently, like most countries, we're underfunding defense. We are underfunding clean air and water. We are doing absolute minimum in terms of fighting climate change, and everything we do to fight climate change is overcome by the developed countries that are largely polluting the planet. I mean, China alone is responsible for about 50% of the planet's pollution. Our contribution is minor, but we're certainly suffering from it. Hugh mentioned that nuclear war was a problem and that we needed to get off the planet in case we destroyed the planet. But in terms of cost benefit, even if the planet was badly damaged, it would undoubtedly be cheaper to re-terraform the Earth than it would be to terraform Mars from scratch. At least we have a magnetic field. At least we have an atmosphere. It might be polluted, but cleaning up pollutants is a hell of a lot easier than actually supplying the atmosphere to begin with. And perhaps the money would then be better spent dismantling these nuclear arsenals. And let's be clear, war goes wherever people are. We send people to Mars from Russia, China, and the United States. Who's to say they won't kill each other? The fundamental problem are humans killing each other. It's not getting off the planet. No matter where we go, there we are. So it's not like we're sending some other race to Mars. We're sending us to Mars. And if there was a war on Earth, there'd be very likely to be a war between the various colonies on Mars from the different major countries, and they wouldn't survive either. I mean, it wouldn't take a nuclear bomb to take out a colony. All it takes is an air leak. And so that goes along with all of the other problems we're not prepared to deal with. A major medical disaster on Mars. How would they deal with it? I mean, we certainly have had examples and remote outposts in the Antarctic where somebody gets very ill and we can't get them out. They either end their life there or they're badly crippled by the time that they're pulled out of the place. And that's with capability of a much better capability of moving people in the atmosphere than we've got moving people outside of the atmosphere. The opposition argued that we could do this, and I want to point out we don't have the talent. And right now, if we were to develop the talent, let's say if we were to bring a school up to speed and start building aerospace engineers and teaching them and the rest, where would they work? We don't have an industry. they would just get their degrees and they go to one of the developed countries to do their jobs, because that's where the jobs are. We don't have the jobs here. And so we've got a cart and horse problem as well. We don't have an aerospace industry. We don't have the talent. If we build the talent, they're going to go where the industry is and not build that industry here, not without significant incentives. So we have to first train the people, then incent the people, then build the industry here. Or if we want to fast track it, we have to develop financial incentives to hire the financial expertise from outside of country, bring them into country, and provide them with enclaves where they feel safe, where their families can go to school. And our education system isn't exactly the best in the world to begin with. We're going to have to provide them with those benefits to get them over here. That all costs money. Take a look at one space factory. And once again, we're not against space exploitation, but let's take one example. The space factory that Elon Musk is planning on building in orbit around the Earth. $3.2 billion. $1 billion can feed everybody in the Ukraine. $3.2 billion to build that factory. And once again, that's just to build the factory. That's not to build the ecosystem to build the factory. It's not to build the launch capability. Those are all would already be pre-existing. That's not part of the cost. That's simply to build the factory after the infrastructure is in place. And that infrastructure is 10, 20, 100 times the cost of building the factory. Where do we get that money? Like most small countries, California has a larger gross domestic product than we do. So where is that money coming from? So the only argument that we agree with the opposition on is if there is a financial opportunity to actually build parts for these space programs, that does make a certain amount of sense and certainly encourage our industries, if possible, to get involved. But in most cases, our industries are much better served building for electric cars or for the military or for other markets that are much better established and where we already have relationships. Trying to go into an industry we know little about and developing the technology and the skills and everything else is a fool's game because we don't understand the market. We don't understand the players. All of that would have to be built. So in the end, while the opposition, who's not in power, and we would argue should still stay out of power because they're evidently watching too many science fiction movies, is that we need to pick things that we can do and do well, that we can do well now. And right now, our critical needs are to respond to climate change and protect our people. Our critical needs are to make sure people are fed. Critical needs are to make sure we can hold on to the talent we've got, not try to develop a new set of talent that we can't hold on to either. We're bleeding talent like every small country on the planet to the developed countries. We've got to stop that bleeding. We can't stop that bleeding. Trying to train more talent isn't going to do us any good because we're going to lose them again. A much bigger problem is how do we keep that talent here so they're benefiting this country and not those other countries. Finally, and in closing, if we look at our choices, and life in government and personally is all about choices. You create a hierarchy. Here are the things that we can do, and here are the things that we'd like to do. We'd all like to be able to do all of that list. That's the truth. It would be great to be able to have a space program and be able to stand up on stage with people like Elon Musk and say, hey, we're out there with all the leaders, and we can compete with China, Russia, and the United States in the conquest of space. Hey, but we can't. We're just too small. We couldn't even compete with the United States in terms of capturing Catalina, let alone trying to argue with the United States over some portion of the moon or Mars. We just wouldn't, even if we could get there, we couldn't defend our land against a developed country. And so why go there to begin with? Why go on a particular path of investment that's going to cripple our existing industry, going to starve our people, going to put our country at greater risk, only for a possible outcome of maybe discovering something brilliant in outer space and bring it back home, when we know full well that if we invest that money here in the country, we can fix problems that we have today, problems that we understand and problems we know about. If we can't clean our water, how can we possibly go into outer space? It just makes no sense. Fixing the one problem should be the higher priority. The other problem simply falls off the list. So the government still says that space exploration, not exploitation, space exploration, at least for us, is a waste of time and money. The government rests.
Thank you, Honorable Prime Minister. Today's debate actually is really, really interesting in terms of logic, in terms of understanding the developing world and the global populations. We have more than 7 billion people. And from the 7 billion peoples, around 39.44% people, around 3 billion people, actually grassroots level people, 3 billion people in the remote area, 3 billion people has problem with water, food, healthcare system,
Gaza.
with accommodations and everything. Yes, space related research and activities is very important. Country like Bangladesh, they also have their own spaceship. But fact is that definitely we have to work with these grassroots level people. We have to solve the problems and we have to work together. That is the mission actually World Talent Economy Forum has. At least we have to help billions of people in that challenging moment in this COVID situations. Everyone has a lot of challenges. So that's why World Talent Economy Forum, we also taking our project from the grassroots level. We are bodily moving to the remote area, to this a country like Bangladesh, India, Nepal, Sri Lanka, and these countries. In between 1 month, we'll start our project. But this debate actually mean a lot for us because you people are inspiration for developing world. You people are a great mentor for developing world. You can help. You can help them to understand the like the beauty of modern science, engineering, and technology. There are many big corporations, many big scientists, many big scientific society. But my question is that how we can reach this 39.44%, around 3 billion people. That is our objective. Most probably, we organize many big things, but we never do work for this grassroots level people. This debate actually gives the real understanding about this remote area people. That is the beauty of today's debate. Both of the team, like from government and opposition, they try to bring the important informations. Yes, space exploration is important. Yes, for develop world, but what about the developing world? That is the concern of World Talent Economy Forum. And trust me, how you do debate, how you, because last 20 years I'm in debating communities, in all of the big university I attend in the debate. And trust me, how you do debate, it's very, very, very helpful for our youth community. And we want to see all of you in the real parliament. Then you can change the community, then you can change the world. Adam, I can remember in 2013 I work in Westminster Parliament in English-speaking union. I attend in a lot of professional debate like this. Actually, I get this concept from English-speaking union in Westminster Parliament, in Oxford Union and Cambridge Union. They organize this kind of interesting debate, and definitely we want to make it big. And with your debate, we will create a knowledge-based community. Thank you. Bye bye, and take care.